Dadgummit, blowout. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude, part number 5 of the Dragon 1/35 scale Jagdtiger. So as you can see here, I have an idler that is off of the vehicle. So here's why. I blew it whenever I put this thing together, in that I glued the idler adjuster here. I glued it into place, and I shouldn't have done that. There's a couple reasons why. Number one, well, the main reason why is can't adjust the track tension. And the problem with these type of tracks is it's not like a regular, like most tracks where you just have, you know, a link connecting to another link. You have the link and then this connector part here with these little extra bits. So instead of having this much of adjustment room or wiggle room, whatever you want to call it, it's much longer. So if the idler is not positioned properly, properly, either you're going to have way too much sag in your track, or there won't even be enough track to connect the ends together. And that's what I ran into. So that is why I had to cut these off, because I'm going to have to reposition them. So like here is the track kit, or the kit tracks. And what I'm going to have to do is put this in position here, and then put everything in place once, you know, I get this painted. For the other side, I have the T-Rex tracks, which won't be as big a deal, but I'll still have to position the idler. So what I did using this saw is I sawed this thing off. Now, fortunately, the way this thing is made, where it cut off right here flush with this part, this was a hollow tube here, the part that goes into the kit. So that's going to really give me a chance to save the day, so to speak. So I cut this little piece of styrene here, sprue, and I can glue that into place. And basically what I've done is I've created myself an adjustable idler. So I really lucked out. I thought I was just going to have to glue this flat on there and hope it stayed. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this glued in here, and then I will move on with painting the tracks, doing some weathering, doing some metal work on these wheels here, and get ready to get that underneath part done so I can move on to paint and weathering and stuff like that on the upper surfaces. All right, so I've got both sides done, and as you can see, that'll fit right on there, and we have some adjustment. Stoked. So now with that done, and a base coat of paint on the tracks using MRP Extra Dark Rust, I'm ready to start doing some weathering underneath here. And I'm going to keep it pretty simple up underneath here because it's not going to be that visible, but I do want to do something. So I think what I will probably do here is what I'm going to do is use this for underneath here. I think I'm going to use this MIG pigment Dark Earth mixed with some pigment binder, which makes kind of a muddy stuff. I'm not going to put it on very thick, but I do want to get some texture going on underneath there. Not that it's going to be real visible, but that's the plan. So let me get some of that mixed up. All right, while that stuff is drying, the next thing I want to do is start doing some metal, some burnished metal, i.e. the rims of the road wheels, the teeth on the drive sprockets, obviously the metal or the contact parts of the idlers, and the tracks where the road wheels run. So for that, I'm going to use a graphite pencil, and all I do is this. So I'm going to work on that, and then hopefully by the time I get done with this, the mud will be dry enough that I can start working with some dry pigments. All right, the next thing I did was using some light sienna pigments. Kind of stippled that on there just to kind of dull down that harsh dark, and there's enough of the dark showing through that gives it a little bit more depth, a little bit more texture without it being too crazy. So got that side done. I'll do the other side, and then I can start putting the tracks on. All right, so here's what's gone on since my last little segment there. Kind of forgot to video anything, but I got the tracks installed and the fenders. So let's talk about the tracks really quick. So this side here is the kit tracks, and this side here is the T-Rex tracks. So a friend of mine, Keith, the guy who actually gave me this kit, he asked me what I thought about the tracks and how I like them in comparison to each other. And my response was, if I had it to do over again, knowing what I know now, I would probably have just used the kit tracks. And here's the reason why. Number one, you can't really see up in here where the sag is. So, you know, one of the benefits of individual track links, workable tracks, is the fact that you can get a realistic sag. And they do that. They work great, but you can't really see it compared to that and that. And the kit tracks, one of the drawbacks of kit tracks, in this case magic tracks for Dragon, is you have those ejector pin marks on the inner part of the track link, and those can be a real pain to clean up. But as far as the amount of work it takes to do the T-Rex compared to the kit tracks, there's no time savings either way, because cleaning off the ejector pin marks, which are proud of the surface as opposed to recess, it's super excuse me, super easy. So that's my thoughts on the tracks. I like them both, but you know, I could have saved myself a little bit of money and just went with the kit tracks. So there is that. And then the fenders, they went on okay. Had a little bit of, they didn't fit exactly perfect on the front. And I don't know if I misaligned something somewhere. It's no big deal. I'm not really concerned about it. There's a little bit of a step here, which I could possibly get rid of partially by gluing it and clamping it, which I may do. But anyway, there's where we are. So with that, all I need to do is glue the barrel in. And once I do that, I can get this thing primed and start painting this thing, because the construction's done. Now, one thing I will note, it may not be obvious until I take my final photos, and some people may not catch it, but I only did 6 spare tracks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 on this side and only 2 on this side. And what I did is, when I weathered the tracks, I left these 2 right here, which would have been these 2 here, unweathered. Now I'll add a little bit of dust, but the rest of it's going to be crudded up a lot more. So hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit of a differentiation. And it might be, you know, to those that pay attention, it might be somewhat obvious that the tracks, those 2 track links were replaced. Some people may not even notice it, or would not have noticed it if I hadn't said something. But there's that. So I think, yeah, that's the end of the construction. All I gotta do is glue that barrel in. So I think I'm gonna end this video right here. So ends part 5 of the Dragon 1/35 scale Jagdtiger Porsche Production type. So next time when I come back, I will do the primer and start painting this thing, and then maybe get into weathering on the same video, but we'll see. So anyway, as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and if you enjoyed this, maybe hit the subscribe button if you haven't. If you want to watch more of this build or some of my other builds, stay tuned. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I will see you all later. Alright, time for a bit of makeup. Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and part number 6 of the Dragon 1/35 scale Jagdtiger Porsche Production type. Alright, quick recap of part 5. I installed the tracks, and I got the primer and the base coat of paint put on. So now I'm ready to start painting some details and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to paint the exhaust, and for that I'm going to use Ammo by MIG Rust Tracks, and that's going to be my base coat. So I'm going to get that painted on there, and then once that dries, I'll talk a little bit about what I'm going to do to actually weather the exhaust. Now, one thing to note on these Ammo by MIG paints, it says brush and airbrush. They are pretty thin, so it takes a number of coats to actually get it to where it looks really opaque. But in this particular case, I'm not too concerned about it, because this is going to have multiple layers of we'll call it effects. I'm not using any of those, like, you know, effect sets or whatever you want to call it. I'm just using straight up paints and oils and whatever else I can find in my bag of tricks. But it's going to look kind of rough, but that's going to add to the variation that I want to achieve a rusty deal. Now, one thing I want to make a note of right here is there are times, I used to do this, but sometimes when people do rust, and you know, here's the thing, I know it's, you know, it's your model, do what you want, blah blah blah, that's great, and I fully agree with that. However, for me, I do like to achieve a level of realism as much as I can get with my abilities and with what's possible on a canvas such as a armored vehicle or aircraft or whatever. But a lot of times people will get this really gnarly texture, and basically the exhaust will just look like just beat to death. I'm talking just rough and just really heinous looking. So one thing I like to do when I can, and if I remember to do it, because I don't always do this, but I like to try and remember, keep in context the subject matter I'm working with. For example, the old Jagdtiger. It was in service for a very short period of time, and it didn't see a lot of really hard usage, like say maybe a Panzer IV that was around for a really long time because it's an earlier war vehicle, spent more time in combat, could have even spent time in a couple of different theaters of operation. So because of that, I'm trying to keep in mind that this thing would not be that, as Napoleon Dynamite would say, not that decroded. So trying to keep that in mind as I do this work here. You know, yeah, it's going to be rusty, but it's not going to be all lumpy and like layers of, like on really rusty. I should have painted these before I installed them, but I didn't. It's not going to be all lumpy and mangled looking. It's just going to be a layer of rust and burning. You know, that kind of tan, dusty, burning look, burnt look. For example, if you go out and look at your own exhaust, I mean, you know, I'm driving a car that was made in 95, built in 95, and the exhaust on that thing, it's a little bit rusty, and it's a little bit, you know, burnt looking, a little bit of sooty action going around the tailpipe, but it's not, doesn't have holes in it. It's not all just, you know, rough and super textured and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm saying is kind of know your subject and kind of, you know, and again, you know, your mom will do what you want. I'm on board with that. However, what I'm saying is I don't do things just to do the technique. I do it if the technique is called for in a particular instance. So in this case, it's just going to be rusted and slightly burnt looking. I'm not going to go overboard with all the texture and everything. Just something to consider, something to think about when you're building a model. That's my 2 cents worth. 10 by 10 rule. 10 different people going to do 10 different things and have 10 different opinions. And that's what makes life grand. So enough of that blabbing. Let that dry up, and I'll start thinking about painting some of the details around the rest of the vehicle. So real quick, like, I was just getting ready to take this tape off, and I thought, hey, wait a minute. I don't think I'm going to do that. And here's why. Gives me something to hold on to without getting my fingers into the pigments and stuff that I applied on the running gear already. And I plan on spraying this once I get all the detail painting done and all that. And the non-powdery weathering. Once I get that done, I'm going to spray it with a flat coat to tone down this semi-gloss a little bit. And if I spray it with a clear coat with this stuff off, it'll mess up all of the dry pigment work I did. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that on there. So as I said earlier, I'm going to start painting this detail stuff. I'm not gonna bore you with that, but you know, I gotta paint all these gun cleaning rods, the axe, shovel, sludge hammer, just, you know, all this stuff. So anyway, I'm gonna get cracking on that, and then we'll come back. All right, so I've got all the details painted. Next thing I want to do is add a wash, and for that I am using Ammo by MIG brown wash for German dark yellow, and it's pretty stinking basic. I just take my brush I use for washes here, dip it in there, and start applying a wash. So let's go down here. Let's start with this in the back. Whoa, my brush is messed up. Hold on. Okay, I just need to clean my brush. That was weird. Looks like it had something dried on it. So all I do is dip it in the stuff, get some of it off so it doesn't like totally flood the whole thing, and just hopefully you can see. If not, I'll do some up above. Touch the details, let it flow around, do its thing, blah blah blah. Let's see, let's try, it's hard to see there. Here, let's try this. Yeah, I'm shaking pretty good. Just had some coffee. Just let it do its capillary action. Let it just fill in all the details thusly. Like that. Now there's big blobs there. Once it dries a little bit, I'll use a Q-tip and wipe that off. That's the nice thing about these washes. They wipe off really well. All right, especially when you have like a, you know, kind of a semi-gloss finish. It's one of the reasons another one of the many reasons I like this paint. All right, so then we'll just demonstrate a little bit here. And that'll help bring out the detail. So for some of you that are watching this video, it's the same stuff I do in every bleeding video. But in case it's somebody that might just be getting into the hobby or may not be totally hip to what's going on, this could be helpful. The rest of you can skip it. But yeah, see, just really adds a little bit of pop to the detail. You can see this compared to this. Just helps to bring it out, simulate shadowy conditions around the detail. Gives it a little bit of depth. All right, so I will keep working on this and then come back here directly when I'm done, and we'll take a look at what is next. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. This is referred to as a pin wash. When you're like focusing on specific details, as opposed to what's sometimes referred to as a sludge wash, which means you just smear it on the whole thing. So, and you know, as one person so amazingly pointed out one time, this is going to be kind of a rant. There are times when people say things in modeling that may not be 100% accurate. Okay, so reading one time about somebody doing a pin wash, and somebody responded and said, well, that's not a pin wash because you're not using a pin. And it's like, okay then. Yeah, technically that's true, I guess. but, you know, are you really going to be that nitpicky about it? When you say pin wash, anybody who does models and has for a while, when you say pin wash, they know exactly what you're talking about. Just like the M4 A3 E8 being referred to as an Easy 8. Technically, no, it's not called an Easy 8. But if you call it an Easy 8, pretty much everybody knows what you're talking about. So, yeah, you know, we can get picky about nomenclature and stuff like that. But sometimes, you know, it's all in the delivery. Rant over. I'll be back. Okay, quick comment here. I'm doing the Zimmerit, putting some wash on the Zimmerit. Now what I'm doing here is I'm intentionally not being 100% on getting it in all of the Zimmerit. I'm just like running it up a row and just letting what flows, trying to get it to where it's not even. You can see there's some spots where it hasn't filled in with the wash. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's giving it some variation so it doesn't look quite so uniform. Trying to get a little more randomness. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Just going right down like that. Bing, bing, just like that. See, I'm not making sure it flows through everything. I'm just being real random about it. All right, and then once this dries, again, I'll use like a Q-tip / cotton bud / you know, ear cleaner thing, and I'll get the excess off. All right, so just wanted to touch on that really quick, literally and figuratively, and once it has some time to cure up, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. All right, so this is how it looks with the wash and a flat coat. That was almost disastrous, but this is where it sits now. So now I can peel the tape off of the bottom here, and I can start thinking about some weathering. So let me get the tape peeled off, and I'll talk about what I'm going to do next. All right, so using the dark dirt, this stuff, Ultimate Weathering Wash Dark Dirt, I added some dark stains and stuff around, and you know, I'm not real stoked with it. I just seem to have a lot of trouble with that dark stuff. The lighter colors seem to work fine, but the dark really stains and creates tide marks and stuff. But it is what it is, as people say. I hate that phrase, but I've become to use it more frequently. So right now, though, I want to add some dust. And for that, I'm going to spray on some heavily thinned Tamiya XF57 buff. So let me do that real quick, and then we'll come back, and I should be getting pretty close to this being done. All right, so I got the buff sprayed on. I also use dark earth and light sienna pigments. Scuffled it here and there to just kind of dust up some areas and tone some of the darker stuff down. And so with that, I think this thing's done. And so ends part 6 of the Dragon 1/35 scale Jagdtiger Porsche Production type. So next time for part 7, I'll come back, I'll give my thoughts on the kit, talk a little bit about it, talk a little bit about the process, and do a slideshow as per usual. So if you like this video, maybe think about subscribing if you want to see more of my builds. Hit the like button. What that does, I don't know, but everybody says it, so I'm saying it too. Hit the like button, folks, if you liked it. If you didn't like it, then hit the dislike or stupid video button or whatever it's called. So yeah, that's it. So thanks for following along thus far, and until next time, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.